Hi everyone, it's Marty. Welcome to class 43. And this is going to be about cooking tips. I want to make sure that you have what you need as far as cooking tips go. And with this, we have in the agenda, Dr. Bree did the handouts. If you've come in and you've met Keishi, she's wonderful. And she did some physical activity with resistance bands, and then we cooked and we did successes and challenges, and then we talked about different cooking techniques. Okay, so things that we cooked were a simple mushroom pan gravy and then tofu cutlets. So let's talk about the cooking. The tofu cutlets, we made them out of firm tofu. People have asked me, how do I cook with tofu? And this is what I wanted to kind of explain. I just used firm tofu, and I didn't spend hours draining it and pressing it or any of that stuff. And people thought it tasted okay. It was just firm. You could use extra firm, which would have a little bit stronger texture. You could also freeze the tofu and thaw it, and all the water is going to come out of it. I mean, it's going to be really super, super firm. So that's one of the things you can do. The other thing is that we had a 14-ounce size. There are different sizes that tofu comes in. It used to be it came in 4 ounces, that was it. Then it shifted to 1 pound all the time. Now you can get 14 ounces, 16 ounces, and 19 ounces. So with a 14 ounce, you can definitely cut 8 cutlets out of it. In fact, I generally get 9 out of that, and I get 10 definitely out of a 16 ounce. But if you're not sure, then you just really want to easily put together. You can just cut it in half, and then you cut it in half, each side of that in half, and then each one of those 4 pieces in half. Boom, you have 8. If they're a little bit larger, that's not a big deal, but it just depends on what size of the tofu. At Trader Joe's, they have a 19-ounce. For that, you could probably cut that into 12 pieces pretty easily. Then we dredged, which in the instructions it just tells you you have 3 pans. If you have 3 pie pans, that's great. You can use any kind of flat pan, it doesn't matter. And you have flour in one with some onion powder, onion and garlic powder. Then you have a little bit of water in with some flour in the next pan. In the next pan, we put in panko, breadcrumbs, flax meal, and we put in, what else did we put in? We put in something else. Put in flax meal. And then I chopped up some walnut nuts, really small. So you could put in any kind of nuts that you like. That's the kind of crunchy part, and I like that, but depends what you like. Then we did the mushroom gravy. Okay, we had a major disaster with this mushroom gravy that I made before class so that I would have some hanging around, so we could do this quickly. I'm going to give you the recipe for what I did in class, but really quickly and easily, I took the walnut. The original recipe asks you to put walnuts and water together. I kept that, and I put that through a food processor. So it's almost like that's what the cream is. And then I actually seared onions and mushrooms, and I put a lot of herbs in them. I put poultry seasoning, thyme, basil, and sage. And I put in at least a teaspoon of each one of those. So I used a cup of onions. I used about 2 cups of sliced mushrooms. And then I added a couple of cups of broth. And then, and all those herbs. And then I added about a 1/4 cup of Dijon mustard. And I let that cook for a couple of minutes. Then I thickened it with cornstarch, about 2 tablespoons of cornstarch and a little bit of water. And I shook it up and added that. When it started to thicken, I was like, okay, good. It's thickening a little bit. That's great. And then I added the walnut stuff. I'm going to put this in a recipe for you, but I just want you to understand that's what we did because we had a disaster with the other recipe. So I had to quick make something up, and that's what I did. Oh, I also put in a little tamari to add. We had made the broth very low sodium, so I thought it needed a little sodium, so I added the tamari. We cooked the tofu for 20 minutes. Everybody really loved it with the mushrooms. So just FYI, worked out really well. Then we talked about successes and challenges. We talked about environmental issues, which people had a little bit of a time thinking about what environmental issues were in their area until we mentioned Denmark's water issue. And then people were prompted, kind of sparked in their head what's been going on. We also talked, what is your biggest challenge? Like, what is still going on, even though you've been in this, for like 18 months? What is the biggest challenge you have? And it was helpful to have people share what that was. Okay, then we started talking about kitchen hacks. And this is what I did. When you look at the handout for the kitchen hacks, the first thing it says, use 2 plates to slice cherry tomatoes in one smooth move. And I did that for everybody to see. You have to fill the plate. Obviously, for the study, we have to do 4 or 5 packages of grape tomatoes or cherry tomatoes or whatever we're using for a night. So this is really helpful. And also for prepping for salads, like that jar salad. So you fill a plate, and I use a small plate, like a dessert plate. Fill it up with the tomatoes all the way up to the sides. You put another plate, same size, on top of it. Push it down. You want to make sure that it's really secure. And then you take your knife and you slide your knife. You start slicing your knife between those 2 plates. And you're not going to be able to go straight through unless you have a really, really, really sharp knife. But otherwise, you're just going to have to a little bit saw away. I turn the plate a little bit to make sure that I get all the tomatoes. But it works really well. Everything gets cut in half. Now, not everything ends up being a perfect cut, but instead of having to cut, 50 or 60 tomatoes in half, one at a time, we can just kind of clean up the few that aren't totally cut. So that's how that works. And then I'm just going to talk about other hacks, and I'll talk a little bit about what's in your handouts, what people went, wow, that sounds cool. The other hacks that we talked about were miso. If you want to use miso, which is another great way to add a salt to a sauce, you put it in at the very end. So you basically are making your sauce. It's almost ready to go out to the table, but it's still hot. You put the miso in. And then you will still get all the probiotics that you want from the miso. So you need to turn it off. It cannot be boiling. If I'm steaming something in a sauce, at the very end, then I take the lid off. I let that plume of smoke leave so that it works. All right. Other things that people thought were really helpful was grilling your fish on top of lemon slices. And all of this is in the handout that I gave you. So people thought, wow, that's really cool. This is also the time for herbs, and my herbs are coming in. And instead of having to hang them around my kitchen and look like, I don't know, like I'm some kind of herb witch, I can just put them in the microwave. So that's really cool. The tomato thing, speeding ripping up. I'm just pulling up the stuff that people went, wow, oh, that's right, that's really cool. Especially get creative with covering. That's on page 2. I did this when I was in a hotel. I had something left over, and they had a shower cap, so I used the shower cap. So that was useful when I was out there. The citrus, we have spoken a number of times with different recipes where we put the citrus in the microwave for 15 seconds. And all it does is it just opens up the cells. It doesn't cook anything. It's 15 seconds. And it just relaxes and warms it just a little bit so you get twice as much juice. Everybody also thought the hack about keeping pots from boiling over, just putting a spoon across the top of a pot was going to keep it from boiling over, was really useful. I've used the wet paper towel on bottles of absolutely just soda, never beer. Let's see. The really good thing about flipping is good. Make sure that your pan is out. That's really helpful. Cutting the brownies is really good. I thought that was a really good, easy one. The birthday cake one, I've known people use that one. And the other one I learned this year from one of our students was peeling skin from ginger. This really works. The spoon thing really, really works, and it works really well, and you can do ginger really fast. And also keeping the cutting boards really nice. We gave away a wooden cutting board, so that we were like, wow, we're really glad we gave you that hack. Keeping your recipes clean is great if you have cabinets. And keeping your knives sharp, I think that's a really helpful one also. And the last one I've definitely put in there because I wanted to make sure that people realize, especially if you're cooking with oils, that you should have baking soda near your stove. I use baking soda as an abrasive to clean pots and pans. And I also just keep it near the stove so that if something should happen, I have a flame come up, I can just douse any kind of oil with baking soda. As I said, our prize was a beautiful cutting board. It was really gorgeous. And what did we talk about today? We talked about cooking with tofu and hacks to help in the kitchen. So read through these and see which ones you can really use. Next week's, so next month, at the end of this month, we're going to be having a trainer come in. If you are having any kind of plateaus or you're trying to figure out, okay, so what should I really do? How, like I'm so far I'm doing really well, but I kind of don't get the weight off here. You can talk with them. That's why we're bringing them in. It's going to be catered, so please RSVP so we make sure we have food for you. After that, we want to have some fun. It's going to be Thanksgiving, and we thought it'd be really fun to do a PTC test. And what that test does is tell you if you're a super taster. And I know I'm not a super taster, but I think it'd be interesting to find out which one of our participants is a super taster. We're also going to be talking about target marketing, and that is how I worked on Wall Street, and I also did work on Madison Avenue. And I think it's really interesting to talk about how the marketplace targets African Americans and the South in the types of ads and how they are portrayed in these ads. And then after that, we'll talk about holiday planning because we want you guys to get through the holidays, and we'll be having a potluck. We'll also be having a Thanksgiving potluck. Please fill out your monthly questionnaire. It's really important. Fill out the questionnaire at the end of this so we know that you get credit for doing the makeup class. And thank you so much for being a part of the study. Thank you so much for everything you do. I say it all the time, but we really, really do appreciate every single thing that you do. We know how hard it is, and we appreciate you and your time.